creators create almost like this shield of consumers, and they keep us safe and they keep us protected, and they also hold people accountable. And I think it's such a beautiful thing.
Focus on output, ensuring your clients are happy, and you'll be truly successful.
Hi everybody, I'm Nina, the social media lead here at Viral Nation. This month we're celebrating 10 years of Viral Nation, so of course I had to get our founders Matt and Joan here to take a trip down memory lane and reflect on the past decade. So hi guys and welcome.
Hello everyone.
Let's start off with the journey of VN as a business. So how has your business evolved over the past decade, and what factors contributed most to your success?
Well, when we started, Matt and I were just kind of young punks trying to figure out kind of what we could do. We had so much ambition and we had so much energy. And, you know, for Matt and I, it was always about trying to figure out if we could create something different, create something new, and ultimately be as successful as possible. And we worked really hard through a couple business ventures before Viral Nation together. And then, you know, kind of this beautiful gift of Viral Nation was born. Matt and I really had this idea that, you know, social media was being really undervalued. And we thought that being, you know, kind of young guys at the time, I think we were like 21, 22, understanding social kind of firsthand and seeing what was evolving, what was happening, we just wanted to be a part of it. So we decided to risk it all and, you know, shut down everything we were doing and focus on Viral Nation. And, you know, the evolution of that has been truly remarkable. We started doing talent, as a lot of people know, actually NHL players, and then Vine stars, and then social creators across the different platforms. But that's where we began, and that naturally evolved into the marketing services business, and that naturally evolved into the technology business. So, you know, we've really spent the last 10 years trying to be the best we can for the space, understand it as much as possible, steward it forward, and really try to lead this amazing revolution of kind of creator and social that the world's kind of seeing.
And Nina, it was interesting because Joe and I were in college or university for us Canadian folks. We never took a marketing class. We were never marketers by any, you know, definition of what those terms were. And the only thing that we did know that was instilled in us from when we were kids was how important treating your customers are and how important successful customers are. And that's something, you know, even our previous businesses, whether, you know, it was just us selling stuff at a fair or as small as they were, no matter what, you know, your customer is at the root of everything, and ensuring successful customers will take you far as a business. So like that's even as we instill those traits in everyone today. I think the market's changed. There's been new social platforms. There's been so many things that have happened, but that's one thing that hasn't changed. And that's at the root of this business, whether they're influencers or brand clients, treat everyone really well, and, you know, the business will flourish and grow.
Love that. And tying into that, are there any big learning moments for the agency? Anything that's ever happened that kind of was like a learning opportunity throughout the 10 years that you guys were like, maybe we should do something different, or maybe we need to pivot?
So many, Nina. Let's let Matt start.
Yeah. I think there was two. I think two that popped there. There's three. I'll go with two because we don't talk about them a lot. There was one pretty early on where we weren't generating a ton of revenue, and I think this was within our first year, and we wanted to figure out a way that we can help reduce the cost of our office. And we almost subsidized our office to have like a nighttime escape rooms, because we had so many offices in this building that we weren't used, because it was literally just us two, and it was 3,500 square feet for two guys and Tony. And we almost turned our office into escape room to help subsidize costs. And it was that moment where we said, no, we're not going to do it. We want to keep full focus on Viral Nation. It was one of those moments where we're like, hey, we have to be able to pay for this office and this rent, as small as that was. But that was a big deal for us because that allowed us to solely focus. Because remember, we still were paying tuition at school. Like we were students, and, you know, we didn't have much, and it was just us, and we were just going at it full time. So we had to think about ways to make ends meet. And then another one that popped in my brain was we had a gaming client. I won't mention which one it was. And we did a mobile app campaign, and they were going against some Goliaths on the App Store, where if you typed in the name of the app, you would never, ever find it until you're like 15 apps down. And it was so difficult to actually find that app that campaign didn't match the goals of the customer, being they wanted to become the next viral sensation, and they barely had any money to do it. So we got a lot of pushback from that client, and they were very unhappy because we didn't have 1 million downloads in a weekend, which was, you know, wasn't possible. So that was a very difficult moment for us, because, you know, we were left with a bunch of different costs associated with those influencers, and the client was very unhappy. So that taught us a lot about what to do and what not to do in some of these campaigns. And that was very early on in the journey of us being brand direct. So that one was a fun one. We learned a lot about gaming. I know Joe has a few more.
Well, for me, like the biggest learning I have, and I'm still trying to figure out what the answer is kind of the disruption COVID caused businesses and navigating through that, and now the aftermath of that, and how the world has changed, and how you bring people together, and how, I think is probably, like, for me, the biggest lesson of the 10 years is just understanding how big of a magnitude of change can really happen and how you have to navigate it was just something that you'd never anticipate or never think about, and then boom, it's there. And I think a lot of businesses are still trying to figure out what that means, and me included. And I think the other big learning was for me that just always pops in my head is I remember being on a golf course with Matt and Tony, and the business was at the time doing better than it's ever been doing, and we didn't have enough money in the bank to pay the employees. And I remember that vividly. This was probably like 7 years ago or 6 years ago or something. But the business was doing really well. The problem was we had too many big clients, and the big brand clients, they take a long time to pay you. So we were doing better than we ever did, yet we were waiting for so many payments to come in from these big brands that, had this conversation on a golf course where it was like, oh my God, I got to shut down my salary. I got to loan the business every dollar I have left, and doing that in a time when things are good was really weird. So for me, that was an interesting learning kind of as an entrepreneur and a leader, was just like, you always need to be on top of everything you can, good, bad, otherwise, to make sure that you're always in a great position. But it's just one of the ones that freaked me out, because I remember flying so high, feeling like the business was doing so amazing, and it was, and then learning about cash flow and big brands and stuff like that pretty head on. So those are the two for me that I think probably biggest impact in learning for me.
I feel like I've never heard actually this side, so I'm really happy that you guys shared those stories. What was like one of the moments for both of you where you guys were like, we made it. We made it as an agency, whether it's a client or creator or campaign or moment, like anything?
I don't know. I think for me, when, not to make it a vanity thing, but when Viral Nation hit 100 million in revenue, for me, it was like I had that oh my God moment of like, when the scorecard has the number on it, it's not me, it's not Matt, it's the business, it's the idea, it's everything that we ever dreamed of kind of coming together. And then I remember like it was yesterday, like when we hit 100 million in revenue, and remembering to myself, like I had this like waterfall of like, oh my God, like what do you mean? We employ this many people, there's this many businesses that rely on us, we're doing big stuff, big companies, and the magnitude of everything just like hit me like a sledgehammer, and I just felt like little, I just felt, oh my gosh, like. And then when you come out of that cycle of thinking and you're on the other side, it's like, wow, like it's almost like validating, because at some point, even like today, I feel like that kid still that started the business, and I still like participate with the teams, and I'm still in there and stuff like that. But when I step back and actually think about the magnitude and the size of what was created here at Viral Nation, and all the stuff the teams had to do in order to get there, and all these day one people we have still here with us, and so many crazy boundaries were broken. And being two founder guys who frankly didn't come from very much, and being in Canada and being able to lead an industry that like has global impact from here, to me still seems like alien. It's like, oh my God, like it can't be true. Like so I just remember that day when Matt told me, he's like, dude, we hit 100 million revenue today. And I was like, I'll never forget that feeling ever. And it was interesting because it's not the best feeling, honestly. It's amazing, but like it just hit me so hard to think about like the reality of it. It was like, oh, are you serious? But it is a beautiful thing. And I think that milestone for me marked a lot of the change and a lot of the business maturity, and a lot of like things that come with that have been some of the harder things I've had to tackle and had to learn and had to grow up to. But yeah, I'd say that one for me.
I think that it was all perspective, Nina, because we had a couple of these moments along the journey where, we went from 70,000 to a couple 100,000 to a million to a couple million to 10 million to 12 million to 30 to 50 to 100. And, it was all perspective, because even when we hit like 3 or 4 and, we grew, that was big moments for us. We thought we made it because that's what we knew at the time.
Me and Matt used to chest bump each other at full speed in the hallway if we got a deal for $20,000. Like, not even joking. That was our.
Not a word of a lie, Nina. We did a when we had, for like the first couple of years of starting, if we got over a $25,000 deal, we would throw like a nightclub party where we would get a booth and bottles at a nightclub downtown to celebrate it. That's how excited we got.
It was so much fun. Yeah, I'll never forget. And like, Matt, remember closing those deals, like waiting by the email, hoping to God that
2019 was a big year because that was one of our biggest growth years ever. But a lot had happened that year. Like our APAC business was growing like a rocket ship. We were on planes like 70 times that year. But there was a couple of moments. One is we won Influencer Marketing Agency of the Year. This was early on. This was at the IMAs. It was their first annual one. That was a very big moment in our journey. But then I'll never forget, we did the summer before, we did this annual general meeting downtown Toronto. We were at a rooftop and there was about 85 people there, or 100 maybe, and it was all staff. And we're like, holy geez, we have this many people. And we were like talking about where we were going and all this stuff. And like that was the moment we were like, wow, this is a ton of fun. And that day was like, it was amazing. It was all day, all night. Everyone was going at it. It was so much fun. And that was this moment where I just said, hey, there really is something here. It pales in comparison to where we are now, but perspective at the time was like, wow, there's 100 people here. And we've grown the business 4x since then, but it was a very different time pre-COVID, as Joe was saying, because like everyone was together every day and you could see it grow. Like literally every day you'd see more and more people in the office. So like that was your measurement of growth. So it all changed a lot, but it's still like every year is a blessing no matter what. And we're very grateful and thankful for how far we've come, regardless of how big or small that is.
Love that. And it's also funny because it's like you forget with this digital world, like because we're all online most of the time and we're all working remotely, you forget how big your team is and how many people are involved. And when you see it in person, you're like, wow, there's a lot of people here. Awesome. All right, I wanted to transition a little bit more into talking about like influencer marketing over the last like 10 years and the changes that have happened. I know you guys have talked about this before, but would love to just chat about it again. So what was influencer marketing like when you first started, and how did you convince brands of its potential? Because we know brands have been hesitant over the years, and I feel like now more and more they're very open to it, but they don't know where to start.
People forget where this industry started, and like me and Matt started like literally couch surfing with these guys. So like me and Matt have been in this creator space since before it was truly even a thought of a thing. So I remember in those days, let's say 2013-ish, 2014, creators were getting $250 or $500 for a post that would get 7 million views. There was no contracts. Like I remember when Viral Nation started contracting creators for campaigns, like it was the first time they'd ever seen a contract. They're like, what is this thing? And like, so, we were really, really there from like the day it happened and like when it started and stuff like that. So Matt and I both have like a really interesting perspective. What I would say though, that hasn't changed for me and Matt through that 10 years of influencer marketing is creators are insanely incredible. Like they like I put them in the same bracket as like athletes and actors and actresses and like they are just outstanding. Like their creativity, their drive, their mindset, their dedication, how they're educating the world, how they're protecting consumers, like. And this isn't, BS, like Matt and I love creators like that much, like we really do because we've been around it for so long. So for me, it's been like this journey and I can't wait to actually hear Matt's thoughts, but it's this journey from hobby to world changing, right? And that's how I see it. And like I have chills even saying that because, when me and Matt were working with these creators and we'd go to New York City and thousands of people would show up to see them, or we would do a marketing campaign with one of them. We'd break websites and, it was like, I just wanted to run out, Nina, and tell the whole freaking world, like, hey, like this is coming and these guys are unbelievable and they're not going to ever be stopped. And like, people love their stuff. And so Matt and I have always been like a really serious, positive voice for the space. And we've been very, very strategic at being stewards and helping to grow. Like, I was probably the first guy in P&G and in McDonald's and different these big companies pitching influencer and Starbucks. And I remember sitting in those boardrooms and like doing a presentation, not on what Viral Nation wanted to sell them, but what was an influencer? Like, what was it? Like, what is this thing? Why does it make sense? So we've ridden that wave from like day one to today. And it's probably like, if someone asked me like the biggest impact I've made in my career or like my life so far, I'd hope that for me, it's been like helping to usher the influencer space to where it is today. And I know there's tons of other amazing individuals and founders and people that we've been working with for the last 10 years. And, I'm not trying to take the credit from them at all. But I think that, we were part of that early crew who, if you took every plane I've been on, every meeting I've been on, every boardroom I've been in, pitching what influencer is, it's in the thousands. So it's truly from like hatchling to today, and watching that go from a hobby to world changing has been everything for me. And I've seen every step of it. But Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say like the biggest change in the last decade for me that I've seen, it's like how people perceive what an influencer, creator, and celebrity are 10 years ago versus today. I'll give you an example. When we started working with professional athletes. And to get a professional athlete to think about using Instagram a decade ago, it was like pulling teeth. You could get them to do anything else, but you couldn't get them to use social media. And that's why when we started with the concept of athletes doing social media deals a decade ago, like it went way over their head because they didn't even know what social media was essentially. But if you turn the table to where we are today, you now have all the mainstream actors and celebrities and athletes, flocking to social media because that's where their alternative revenue streams are, and some of their primary revenue streams versus where they were a decade ago. Perfect example, we work with an influencer now named Tiffany Thiessen. For those that don't know, she was Kelly Kapowski on Saved by the Bell. If we went to Kelly Kapowski 10 years ago and says, hey, you want to use social media in order to do promotions for cooking brands, she would probably look at us like, are you crazy? Versus today, that is now becoming probably her biggest revenue stream, even surpassing acting. And you've seen that change dramatically over the last 10 years. And that's where we initially thought the industry would go, is that it only come a time where athletes were going to get 50 grand to go sign autographs at a dealership because there was no ROI in that. The advertising happening with celebrities and athletes at the time, 10 years ago, just didn't make any sense for the brand. It was way too top of the funnel. It didn't have any sort of attributable metrics versus today. Everything is becoming way more attributable, way more calculated, and way more easy to measure the effectiveness of. So I think like that's been the biggest change I've definitely seen over the last decade.
One question I had was like, how does Viral Nation stay ahead of the trends and like this rapidly changing digital landscape? How do we stay at the forefront of it? And also maybe what upcoming trends do you think will shape the future of marketing?
I think like because remember, for everyone that doesn't know, even though I think we're rooted in this, our talent agency is at the top of its game. And I say the talent agency is the root of where things are going, because where the influencers go and what the influencers start doing is heavily where the space goes. So because we operate such a massive stable and such a massive network of influencers, our business will start morphing as those networks start morphing, the easiest way to explain it. So I think like the industry is going to go way more into, it's not going to be completely replaced, where I think bottom of the funnel activities where you have affiliate, you have heavily trackable ROI based campaigns, you have influencers getting paid way more on performance is going to become way more popular as time goes on, as brands get way more smart. And that you'll see complements, right? You'll see your top of the funnel activities with certain influencer initiatives, and then you'll see your bottom of the funnel activities with more affiliate style content creation and content creators. So I think like that's going to be a major trend, only because as people get smarter, they look way more into ROI, and ROI can only be measured a very specific way in our space. Even though we have other methods to do that on the top of the funnel activities, I think like you're going to start seeing that become way more prevalent as the time goes on.
Matt's answer was a little more tactical. Mine's just more like, I think the future of everything that we do is going to rely on what creators do. I always use this thing where Viral Nation's its best self when we're acting like a creator. Creators, in my opinion, Nina, are the best damn people on social media that exist. And just like if you go to ask, a golfer for lessons, you're not going to ask a random golfer. The PGA Tour professional golfer would be the best one to ask because they're the best at golf. Right. So for me, creators are the best at social, similar to how you can compare it to anything. So big creators and mid-sized creators around the world are, in my opinion, like the social media experts of all experts. And what I've always found is that when Viral Nation, instead of chasing marketing industry trends or what people are doing outside of Viral Nation, if we focus on what creators do best, and the things they're doing or the things they're learning or the things they're trying or the things that they're seeing momentum with or the types of videos they're making or the types of engagement tactics they're using, et cetera. I think Viral Nation's kind of secret sauce, if you will, is understanding how we can emulate a creator for every big modern brand. right? And it's this idea that, yeah, the messaging changes, and yeah, there, there's nuances, but at the same time, what a brand in the modern world we live in right now and into the future wants is to just be more like a creator. So the better we can continue to understand, love, and learn from creators, I think that's Feral Nation's really serious stickiness and secret sauce, is that we listen to these guys and we love them. And we watch, and we're all stewards of social. So as those opportunities come, whether that be with new content types or a new platform, like Matt said earlier, or it's a cool way to hack engagement, or it's a new trend that they've created, or whatever it may be, I think being close to the creator helps Feral Nation always be at the forefront of everything social, if that makes sense.
100%. I think they shape the culture that we're seeing today, like everywhere. Social media is what we're all on all day, every day. So they're definitely very important. How have consumer attitudes towards influencer marketing changed?
So many ways. I would say the biggest one, to like keep it super simple, that I always find is the most powerful way to describe influencers, is influencers and creators have become like the voice of the people. So like they represent us, like the consumer, and there's never really been like a media company, be it on TV or whatever, that's like just for people, by people, right? And what's interesting about creators is and influencers is that basically anything that you want to do as a consumer, anything you can think of, they will validate for you, right? So I'll give you an example. I want to go on a Disney cruise, and I'm going to spend a lot of my hard-earned money to do that, and with my family and stuff like that. I can go on YouTube and watch creators have the whole experience to see if I like the boat. Do I like the experience? Is the experience good? Is it not, right? If I'm buying a car, I no longer have to worry about the dealership and the salespeople at the dealership. I can watch 20 reviews of the car. If I'm buying a new camera, if I'm going for a walk somewhere, if I'm, so creators have really given a voice and a perspective to everything for us. So for me, I always tell people, if you're going somewhere or you're spending over $100 and you're not checking in with a creator first on what that experience or what that thing's going to be, you've lost your mind. So for me, the biggest shift has been, now brands are accountable and companies are accountable to creators, because creators are going to be the ones who validate what they do and how they do it. So I think consumers have drastically changed everything because of creators, and I think that you'd be crazy not to. And if you're someone today who's not utilizing that type of stuff, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. So for me, the biggest shift has been, as a consumer, you have 100 times higher likelihood of being happy with a purchase or being happy with an experience, because creators will lead the way for you. So that for me is the biggest shift and the most measurable one. What do you think, Matt?
I also think the presentation of how creators have promoted products has changed a lot, where as time has gone on, it's become much more natural and organic, versus maybe in the beginning it was a little more forced in terms of like the way they presented their products or services of a brand to their consumers, because people have gone smarter. They've done a lot of content creations, being around a while, so there's much more organic ways of doing that. So I think like the natural element of seeing products and services that creators promote in their daily lives has become much more easy to digest, and I think it's allowed consumers to become much more trustworthy with buying a product or service after they've seen their favorite creator promote it. So that's become a major trend, I think, in confidence in wanting to buy something that a creator promotes, because they realize, hey, it's not spam, versus, and people understand influencer marketing more, so they understand when a creator promotes a product. And a lot of that's come from education over time too.
Yeah, and like if I can add to Matt, like I think there's two other like really crazy cool elements people don't talk about. One is, when you think about a creator and the type of content they're making and etc., I'm someone who's made the shift to kind of social first human. So like when I go home at night, or it's the weekend, or even in the morning, I go to YouTube, and I love watching creator content over TV content. And not because I'm just like biased and I'm in the space and I like creator, but I actually enjoy that content more. So for me, being able to go home and like throw on a really cool golf video for 30 minutes that I really like, to me is like personally 10 times more entertaining than turning on the golf channel, right? I sometimes, the other big one is like education. I've never learned so much than I have over the last 10 years on YouTube. Never. Like people used to make fun of me and say I'm not handy. I come from a family where, admittedly the men in my family have been a bit on the non-handy side. But the last 10 years of, exploring, how to fix things, how to do different things, how to learn how to repair something, like, etc. Like, I find myself like a better human today because I've garnered and been able to get so many skills by learning from creators. It's truly incredible. Like, I have chills even talking about it. If you asked me 5-6 years ago, hey, go fix that thing on a car, right? I'd be like, are you crazy? Like, we got to bring that stuff, you know what I mean? And then today it's like, hey, I want to try fixing that first. And I've been able to now be able to, build things for the kids or fix things. And it's not because of my own innate upbringing or learned experiences. It's truly from YouTube. So I think like a really under talked about side of the creator space is just the level of education people are getting from these people is like astonishing to me.
So my nerdy version of that, Nina, is if I buy an electronic, I probably watch at least 10 different YouTubers that I have like subscribed to where they'll all talk about the exact same thing. And I'll watch 10 different YouTube videos, even if I'm buying something simple, like it's, as simple of an electronic as it may be, I'll watch literally 10 YouTube videos about it. So like the education level of going into every purchase just skyrockets because of what content creators can produce. So
it's become so much more than just basic entertainment and a hobby. Like it's literally like I built my house by using Pinterest and Instagram. Like that's literally every single thing in my house I can probably trace back to a post. So it's truly sensational. Like that's a big question because I think the world is flipped over on its head and changed because of the creator space.
And I think like thinking about it, the one area that it's hit more than others is probably retail. Like I was just thinking about this recently where it's like, remember probably 10, 15 years ago when you used to go into a store, you'd be asking a store associate for advice on certain things
all the time.
Like when you go buy cosmetics, like you ask for like cosmetics, maybe a bad example, but like I remember going into Best Buy or going like to buy a TV or whatever it may be. You'd always literally rely on the person there for their advice on the specific products. Now we literally go into places and say, I want that one. Why? Because I watched 75 YouTube videos about it and I heard it from the creators.
Matt, when I bought my pickup truck and I picked it up from the Ford dealership, I knew more about the truck I bought than the dealership did. Like I was showing them stuff on it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a cool observation. You're right. It's like you just go in not in command. And you know what? Now thinking about it, when you would go into Best Buy to like the 22-year-old guy standing there, and you're like, "What's the best TV?" And he's like, "This one, you believe it?" Like, what does he know? But at the time, like, I worked at Best Buy, right? It's the same with car. Back in the day, there used to be a bad rap about car salesmen. Right? You would hear these stories like, I got swindled by a car salesman, I bought something I didn't need, or whatever it may be. That speaks to the earlier point, I think, Nina, about how crucial of a role like this is playing and how much deadlier the consumer becomes with real information from peers as opposed to like figuring it out as you go.
Yeah, you're right. Because I'm sure that when someone's researching something, they'll see maybe an ad from their favorite influencer, but they'll look further and see if there's like someone who's a smaller creator that blew up for talking about this product.
We both came from very, I think, modest families, right? So for me and Matt, the art of the deal has been like something ingrained in our souls, right? And it's cool because social media actually helps you with that too. Like I'll sometimes be shopping for something. Actually, as early as this morning, I was buying something and I went and looked on TikTok and on YouTube to see if any creators were doing promotions that had like discount codes and stuff. And I found one and I ended up saving like $130 or something like that. Now it's not like game changing, but it adds up and it's special. So like the consumer's so smart. People think like we look at one thing on social or one thing online and then make the decision. Like the reality is it's like, okay, influencer said it's good. Okay, what do these other 4 influencers say? Then once they're done, I'm going to read those Amazon reviews like a freak. And once I'm done that, I'm going back to Google and I'm going to price match all these bad boys across every site that exists. The consumer is just so much more powerful and so much smarter that authenticity and being honest and true is probably the best option for any brand or any company in the world now because we're smart enough to figure it out. So I think it also, like, if we want to get a little deeper, creators hold the commercial industries accountable in a way. Right. There used to be instances back in the day, Matt, if you remember, a product would come out, everyone would buy it and it sucked, right? Or like it didn't work or it was broken or it didn't last or whatever it may be, but they already sold tons of them and we all, it's like now, and if I'm a big brand or I'm a service company or I'm a hotel chain or I'm whatever, I got to sit there and think, hey, I'm going to release this product or this service or this thing, and it's going to get reviewed by people, and those people are going to talk to every one of my customers. So are we ready? And is this exactly what we say it is? Because now we live in a world where, let's say, Nina, you went on a trip and it was like some new hotel and like you're excited to stay there and you got there, it was just a nightmare. Like roof was leaking, food was horrible. Like me and Matt have done those trips 10 years ago, trust me. But now it's like, if you're that place, you're open for 1 week. YouTube's going to destroy you because everyone's going to share their experience. Everybody's going to tag it properly, and I'm going to be able to see it. So influencers almost hold the commercial element of our culture accountable to what they're putting out and how they do it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, there's like a footprint, a digital footprint, or you can just see like what people think about things.
And the companies who make incredible stuff, they continue to fly. Right? You look at a company like as premium as like Rolex, for instance, right? This is a company baked in Swiss watchmaking. They're hands-on, their product is repeatable, it's amazing, etc. So like again, it's this level of accountability because now the internet, the creators are like our captains, right? Like our people captains. And then we're the consumer that's behind them, and it's almost like creators create almost like this shield of consumers, and they keep us safe and they keep us protected, and they also hold people accountable. And I think it's such a beautiful thing.
I have a really cool example actually of this that happened this weekend that shows like the retail example. My wife watches all these mom TikTokers and Instagrammers and all this kind of stuff. And she heard from an influencer that she follows about multivitamins in children and how having a specific ingredient in a multivitamin is actually very bad for kids. Like if you actually think about it, like some of the multivitamins they take has sucralose and fructose and some of those artificial things that actually aren't good for them. So we went into the store asking for a multivitamin recommendation for my boys. And the one that they recommended in the store actually had those ingredients that our boys shouldn't have taken. So literally, and then we looked and then we went back to social media to say, okay, what's the recommended one, and saw it on the shelf, and the person in the store had no idea. So that's just a perfect example of being able to reference these things, and the education you get from it is just.
But like Matt, you're a consumer walking into the domain of an expert and beating them at it. Like that's the level social media is playing in that decision. It's truly unbelievable. Like it really, really is. It's special.
What are some of the changes in the social media landscape from like the past 10 years that you think were like the most unexpected and interesting to witness? So what I had in mind was like the birth and death of Vine, the emergence of TikTok. Like what we can talk a little bit about that, but what comes to mind first?
Vine dying happened happened so fast. Literally, it was like a blink and it just literally almost vanished. That was incredibly unexpected, but not totally unexpected, just because they couldn't figure out monetization. And they tried a number of different ways to try to figure out monetization with creators. All like Twitter even bought companies trying to figure this out, and they never did. And then it just literally, I swear it was probably like a quarter or two where literally everyone just started jumping off Vine. And that happened.
I think they gave us, Matt, like a 90-day heads up, if I remember. It was like 90 days or something like that.
Yeah. And the other one that was just happened almost in a blink of an eye was how the Musical.ly revolution, like for everyone that doesn't know, TikTok was Musical.ly. And Musical.ly came into the world where it was ex-Viners. Literally people on Vine, and then there was some new upstart creators that just came in and literally joined this app. And it was purely lip syncing. There wasn't anything other than lip syncing on this app. And it was a lot of Viral Nation creators that were one of the first creators on Musical.ly, and that's how it ultimately started. And before you know it, it ended up becoming one of the biggest apps in the world. And in a blink of an eye, it became TikTok. And most people don't know that. And this revolution of creators happened, I'd probably say not even 12 months. But a lot of it was predicated on the success of Vine. Like that's kind of how that short form video creation really happened, because there wasn't anything before Vine. It was always long form, whether it be YouTube, Facebook. So those two were probably two pinnacle points in our journey.
Yeah, not a lot of people know this, but like Matt and I literally worked kind of like hand in hand with the founder of Musical.ly to launch Musical.ly with him. And I remember being at, like, I always tell the story. I was at a Bed Bath and Beyond with my wife, and I was in the parking lot, and me and the founder of Musically were like yelling at each other, and I was like, "We got to do it this way," and he's like, "No, you did." Like, we were scrapping in the parking lot of Bed Bath and Beyond, and like for that app to then become, one of the largest social apps on the planet. And like to know that Matt and I and a couple of our early employees were a big part of like moving the first migration of creators to it is pretty special to think about today. And like part of our journey in a sense, like I remember, Matt, I don't know about you, but like I remember onboarding the first like 20 creators on those like big deliverable sets where they had to make like 8 pieces of content a week. And it was a really serious migration we were trying to pull off with the Musically team. And then that turned into, bigger Musically, and then we've been working with TikTok ever since. So like Viral Nation has like a 10-year history with TikTok / Musically. But the other, I think, big revolution that not a lot of people talk about was Instagram stories. Instagram stories are really interesting because Instagram stories was, I always used to refer to it as like the adult version of Snapchat at the time. It allowed people to share things that weren't polished. And I think that unlocked a really different part of Instagram for people. I think prior to that, like, I remember talking to influencers like, oh, I can't post that on IG because it's like not good enough, or, I got to make sure it's perfect. And like it had that more of that tone. And then when Instagram stories came out and creators started really getting authentic and sharing kind of what was going on in real time, and people started doing the same thing, I think that was a game changer, not only for the social space, but for influencer marketing as well. First time ever, we could swipe up to a link, and we never had that opportunity before. So I remember when Instagram stories came out, Nina, Matt and I, every client we had, we were like, we need to launch Instagram story campaigns right now, because swipe up was a big thing and it was still chronological at that point. So you get big views on them and stuff. So anyway, I think that's another cool kind of evolutionary piece.
To add on to that, like I just noticed today actually that TikTok they've had stories now for a while, but they're like really trying to build it out very similar to Instagram. So they like added like that you can tag a brand specifically and that kind of stuff. So I'm interested to see how they're gonna build that out.
I always refer to the social platforms as like they're like the major highway system, right? So you got Twitter X, they're the news, like, but they're on, I call them mega highways because they have billions of people kind of on them every single day. And then you kind of have Instagram, which is the more polished personal brand directive, image heavy platform. That's a super highway. Then you have TikTok, obviously, in the shorter form video content. They got YouTube, the big dog. They're like the HOV lane of that big highway, right? Because they're the long form guys. And then everything else is them just battling with each other to figure out who can get on the exit, off the exit. That's why it's so hard to create new social media platforms, is because each one of these platforms dominates in a core area. Like they dominate it, right? And that's their thing. Like YouTube long form, I think YouTube's going to be the most powerful, biggest company in the world in the next 10 years. But they dominate long form content, right? So for them, they launched their own shorts, and they but it's just them trying to keep people in the ecosystem. They're not trying to like displace Instagram. They're just trying to get more time and different experiences with their audiences. And I think you'll see just more and more of that kind of copy, rinse. They're trying to give value to their customers to keep them on their platforms longer. But I think ultimately each platform's main objective, it's like, Google makes autonomous cars. Great, but they're the biggest search engine in the world. Right. So like that's kind of like when you see a TikTok go and do shorts or go and do stories and start adding features. It's like, yeah, this is cool and people are going to use it, but they know it's not their main piece. And I think it's good for the space to keep that kind of competitive momentum up, because that's how you get like new features, and Instagram does something cooler, or like it keeps the competitive pressure on the platforms kind of alive.
I have one more question that I think would be really just fun, just a little bit of a founder advice moment. What advice would you give to new agencies or influencers entering the market today?
Matt, you take influencers, I'll take companies.
New influencers coming to market.
Yeah. Someone gets started.
Yeah, I would say my mantra with some of these influencers has always been like, distinguish yourself amongst the pack, and don't do what everyone else does. I've always really appreciated influencers that are extremely niche. Like, I'll give you an example. I think some of the most successful creators I've ever seen, and not just by follower size, because follower size isn't indicative of influence, but we've worked with a number of creators in the medical space, whether it be nurses, doctors. We represent a tremendous creator that's a renowned cardiologist in California. We work with a number of specialized creators. I think like really setting yourself apart from a world where I don't even know the stat. I think there's probably like 100 million creators these days. And we're all creators in our own right, but people that think of themselves professionally. I would say be different, be unique, and really try to set yourself to be different than everyone else. Because everyone's trying to make, vlogs, everyone's trying to be themselves, everyone's trying to do the exact same type of thing, like play video games, try to be funny. And no disrespect to that, but if there's a unique pocket within your interest, really try to exploit that, because that's where you'll start seeing real success and distinguish yourself from millions and millions of other creators. And the other thing I'll just say, consistency. No matter what, even if your content isn't the best, consistency will prevail, because all it takes is one video to go viral or get millions and millions of views, and it doesn't matter about your other videos. All it takes is one, and that's only going to happen by being consistent and being very, very active in terms of posting. So
I agree with the master sensei of influencers. He's been representing creators since like 2013. Like he did OG deals. Matt did OG deals in the space. He broke like records on deals in Vine. Like I've seen him do some crazy stuff, but he's truly kind of I think one of the earliest super like stars in that space, and we cultivated and created so many cool opportunities. So he knows his stuff in that area for sure. I think if you're a marketing startup or a technology startup entering the space, my answer is just so simple, Nina. It's like, do an incredible job. So many people rush into the space because they think it's a burgeoning space, but they don't really understand it. Like the reason Viral Nation's special is because we spent 4 or 5 years learning the influencer inside and out, sleeping on their couch, understanding them. Like I understand influencers like I understand my kids. So for me, the way you break through in this space is by doing a really special and incredible job at what you do. So really understanding it, really understanding creators and culture, really understanding the platforms down to the algorithmic pieces. Being a true master and steward of the social space will allow you to go way further, way faster than just entering it and having a good product or a good idea. So I would just say invest as much time as you humanly can in understanding social and just throw yourself into the culture of social, because that's who I always find has the most amount of growth and the most amount of success, is people that really truly understand it and care about it, as opposed to folks who are trying to enter it because it's enterable and it seems pretty simple. Like, yeah, what we're doing is not brain surgery or anything like that, but social's very hard. Social has tons of nuances, and creators are a really special being, and if you don't understand how all those things come together and how to really work them together, you're never going to produce things that do incredible. So I think becoming and truly mastering and loving the space has the highest probability for you to exceed in it.
yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is like client satisfaction over everything, because you never know whether your client is Coca-Cola or it's a company you've never heard of. There is a chance that that company you've never heard of might become a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. Like the biggest client we ever had at one point when we started, their initial budget was $10,000. And nobody, looking at that today, no one would ever take that deal. But we saw massive potential in this, and that grew to a multi-million-dollar account. All you have to do, treat your clients well, focus on delivery. Don't get caught up in the optics of, making sure you have $1 million office for no reason. Focus on output, ensuring your clients are happy, and you'll be truly successful.